Morning from the north. Today, I want to talk about rabbit holes, specifically discus related rabbit holes. What do I mean by that? Well, when you go out and you're just doing your research because you want to take on these fish, and you're a semi-experienced fish keeper, and you already have a base of knowledge because maybe you've owned cichlids before, so that's a good start. There's definite similarities across the cichlid world, behaviors and aggression problems, pecking order issues. These are all things that discus also have and share in common with other cichlids. But they require more finesse. There's no doubt about that. A little more finesse. It's not as much as the discus community would have you believe while you're doing your research and watching videos, and then you start running into don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, and by the time you listen to it all, you're stuck with a bare bottom tank, nothing in it but the fish, and your walls painted blue, and you're doing water changes every day. And therein lies the whole rabbit hole thing. If you fall down the rabbit hole, you just start bumping into another concern, then you bump into another concern and another concern, and they're all valid concerns to a degree, but they get dealt with to very varying levels of varying degrees of absurdity at times. One of the things you'll hear them say is you can't have discus and substrate, which isn't really true. You can have discus and substrate. Substrate has a whole bunch of benefits to it. Why not? But what you got to do is keep the substrate extremely manageable, and the way you do that is keeping it very, very shallow. My substrate barely creeps above the rim of my tank. It's an inch, maybe inch and a half across the whole thing. It's 50-50 sand gravel mix. The sand fills the spaces between the gravel, stops the detritus from sinking easily into the substrate, and I thoroughly clean it with a gravel vacuum in a bucket every week, and that's all it needs. And this tank is heavily populated, so you can have discus and substrate. You just got to be willing to do the work, and that's what a lot of people, we all have lives, and but you can't slack off on these fish. You got to do the work. So a lot of people just eliminate the substrate because they think that's going to eliminate the problem. The problem is bacterial buildup. It doesn't. These fish don't do well with it. All the other fish you've ever owned will do well with it. You probably won't ever notice it's a problem. You can have, thick substrate and, keep your anoxic layer down low and never gravel vacuum it, or maybe, you just clean the surface of it all the time. You can get away with that with a lot of fish, but you're not going to do well using that strategy with discus. Okay? Like, everything you learned with your other fish, throw it out the window and be ready to adopt an entirely new approach. It doesn't have to be the approach that the entire discus community is telling you. I didn't listen to them. I listened to their concerns. Then I weighed the concerns, and I said, how can I address those concerns differently? That's what I've done. And so now I have a traditional looking tank with nice foliage, and I've got more real plants on the way that have been cultured to operate or survive in this temperature, and I'm expecting they're gonna thrive, and I'm gonna have a tank just this. I'll be removing most of the fake stuff. There is real stuff mixed in here, by the way. It's not all 100% fake. It's probably about 20% real right now. and 80% fake. But as I get more real plants, I'll remove the fake ones, and this arch will be just filled with real plant life that actually lives in this water. So I believe the approach is going to be successful. A very experienced plant guy's helping me learn about this stuff. So and we're going to get a refugium down here going as well, so I don't have to overcrowd my tank with plants, because I would much rather, for this is personal preference, but I'd much rather crowd my tank with fish than crowd my tank with plants. I think it's, especially in the case of Discus, far more beautiful. I do want plants. I don't have a problem with plants. But that brings up the next thing they'll tell you to do, is you can't mix Discus with plants. The Discus community will tell you just don't do it. And here's why. Because plants turn into a rabbit hole. What do I mean by that? I repeat myself, but I'm trying to be clear. What I mean is, you start to put your plants before the fish. You notice your plants are wilting. You went to the store, and all the plants that you buy at the store are grown in like 79-degree water, right? But your Discus tank is 85 degrees, and that's just way too off. So you bring home your plants from the store or wherever you ordered them from, they're going to start to melt. They're going to start to fall prey to black algae, because the plant's immune system is weak, and the blackbeard algae is going to take advantage of that. Start to try and feed off those plants and smother those plants, and they just die off. They melt. They die. They get outcompeted. They're weak, and they're weak because they weren't cultured. They weren't grown in 85-degree water. So then what do? We turn the water down. We turn the temperature down, because the plants are not doing well. And we're sacrificing now. We're sacrificing what the fish needs so that we can have nice plants. Now, maybe if you bring the temperature down for a couple months and then you start creeping it back up, you might be able to get the plants to grow into the heat. But it just doesn't work out well, and you end up killing them all. You get 2, 3, 4 months out of the plant's tops. You can check my videos. I've done this countless times. Go out, buy all these nice plants. They'll last for a few months, and then they're dead. And they just slowly wilt and die and melt, and they don't come back because they can't handle the heat. So that's probably the biggest mistake I see as I watch Discus videos from one channel to the next, to the next, to the next, is you want to getting Discus and plants to thrive equally together seems to be the challenge, a challenge that a lot of people want to achieve. But it's a rabbit hole, and it's one that's going to make you start putting the fish second. You're just subconsciously going to be like, my plants look bad, I got to do something, and you start sacrificing the fish for the plants. You can't do that. These are $300 fish. So I would say that's the worst one. But again, that's why they say don't put the plants in. They just tell you not to do it. They don't tell you why. It's because you're going to fall down that rabbit hole, and then the fish's health are going to slowly decline. So let's say, okay, fine, the plants were cultured at 79 degrees, so you're noticing the plants do better if you run the tank at 82 degrees. A whole bunch of people out there will say, oh, you can run Discus at 82 degrees, no problem. Now, if you have fully mature, grown-out, 3-year-old adult Discus, you probably can run them at 82 degrees. But if you're growing them out, they're less than 24 months old, you can't do that 82-degree thing. You need 85, 86, 80, above 85 degrees. I keep mine at 86. Okay? And it does two things. The temperature increases their appetite, increases their metabolism. It increases their growth rate, which is very important for these fish. You only have 15 months to grow them out to their maximum potential. So if you bump a few degrees off your temperature gauge to favor your plants, which could die at any time anyway, and they're not even worth anything, and they're just plants. They're lettuce. They're salad, okay? They're not life forms like fish. So you put the plants first, and you stunt your fish, even if it's just a little bit. You're not going to get maximum growth out of them below 85 degrees. I'm sorry to say it, but it's the truth. So you can see how this is a rabbit hole, and then how it'll slowly come back and haunt you in the end. You'll end up with small discus. They won't be fully grown out. They won't meet their potential. You'll start to get eye to body size ratio issues because the temperature is low. Decreased appetite. The 15-month timer doesn't change. You change the conditions and slow them down. You're failing the discus game. So consider that. Consider that really hard. How important are your plants? Because you might have beautiful plants a year from now, but your discus will be stuck at 4-inch. And the 4-inch discus can still be beautiful, don't get me wrong. But you failed the discus game. And all the discus keepers will say, see, it should have been a bare bottom. See, it should have been that. The other thing is water changes. They don't have to be as frequent as every day. The reason they're doing them every day is because they're trying to keep their free-floating pathogen count down. And a good way to do that is change your water every day. But a lot of these bacterium and stuff that can harm your fish that float around in the water, they multiply in a matter of minutes, and they repopulate themselves in just a few hours. So even a 24-hour water change is still exposing the fish, although it's better than waiting a week, is still exposing the fish to these harmful pathogens. And that's why I've gone hog wild on UV use. Not just filtration use. My filtration's hog wild too, but the UV is powerful for a reason. And it's to keep those pathogens down. Keeping those pathogens down in my water column means I don't have to change the water out. Now the only reason I'm changing my water out is because of nitrates. Just like normal cichlids. And it makes life so much easier. So much easier. So the freshwater world for years has treated UV as taboo. The reef community treats UV as the god of war because it saves them. It saves them from losing very expensive fish. And that is true when it comes to discus. It's the same game. So, you want great discus advice? Just watch reefer videos, because the freshwater advice out there, unfortunately, is very cloudy. Pardon the pun.